you going to do? Oh,
Right.
our football team looks good.
Yeah, real good. So
I the Patriots are playing well. The Red Sox and the Yankees are tied 1-1, and Notre Dame is playing well. So all is good in sports land for me.
it's the right time of year. I'm a Bengals guy, and they're actually pretty good this year too. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm a happy man right now.
good
So
for you. Good for
it's
you.
trying to explain to Hana. They're like, oh yeah, weekends now, or they're kind of busy. So I have like multiple 4 hour blocks that are taken, but we're figuring that out. I like hyped up what a big game Stanford was, and then to say, oh, but then this weekend is also a really big game is
Well,
it's a little
as you know, every time they win, the next game gets bigger. You know.
right. Yep, it
So
doesn't stop. So
so yeah, no, I was thinking about you at church this morning. We were talking about it was the book of Mark, and they were talking about marriage, and
oh, okay, yep.
you popped into my head. You know.
I hope that's a good sign.
You know, Alan, I was thinking in the context of, you know, just selfishly speaking, in the context of supporting me and what I'm doing with Seven Pillars and all that, I thought
Yep.
it might be beneficial before we get into your specific circumstance to just share how I've helped and what I've done and how somebody else might benefit from, you know, things that I might be writing or audios that I might be creating or videos like this that I might be creating. What is helpful? And again, keep in context that not just the career and professional stuff, but the life stuff. So that I've categorized it on the site with regard to emotional, spiritual, physical, which includes nutrition and fitness, which you and I haven't talked much about, but I know we
Mhm.
participate in, and then the professional. So how would one what do you get from this, I guess?
Yep. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is having just one source that I can go to that I trust that's curated a lot of this information beforehand. And it doesn't just focus on my career, it focuses on big picture, just different ways that I can continue to improve. And even if my career is stalled or my health is stalled, I know I can focus on just different components to can constantly be improving and getting better. And I know I can find all of those different opportunities at the Seven Pillars. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's interesting that where'd you meet my dad? Was that at Costco?
It was at Costco, yep, frozen food section. So, and I had on my Notre Dame jacket, and he came over, and then things snowballed from there. So,
Yeah, I think about the mentorship and the teaching stuff all the time as I've enjoyed it, and it's kind of, as you probably can conclude, I've stolen a lot of that stuff from him. You know,
yep,
he's a mentor, he's a teacher, he's a life coach, and been fortunate enough to have him as a dad. So it's kind of cool you guys bumped into each other, and then you met my daughter as well, one of them anyway.
yep, yeah. I think that was 2 years ago now. So
Yeah,
yeah, so I got to meet Carolyn, and she was like running around from yoga class to yoga class, and the
yeah.
fridge looked much healthier than it typically does. So,
Yeah, we have, well, because of my two daughters, we have a lot of nutrition and health and physical fitness stuff going on. I mean, I've been that way my whole life unknowingly. And as
mhm.
they brought kind of more of that knowledge, you know, to present to my day-to-day existence, it kind of, you know, my position on all this stuff is if you're physically fit, if you're spiritually fit, if you're emotionally fit, the professional stuff just glows. It gets better, it gets easier, it gets, you know, more productive, focus, all that stuff. So it kind of comes together for me, and I appreciate the fact that you trust me and that you feel comfortable reaching out and saying, hey, it's transition time again for me. Let's chat, you know. So you know, and I think that is the other kind of, when you talk about copy and messaging and branding and stuff, it's the transition, right? It's like
Mhm.
people that are in professional transition are also in life transition because the two go hand in hand. So now we can kind of swing it back into your world and say, what's going on?
Yeah,
Bring me up to speed as if we didn't talk the other day.
right. Yeah, so it's been a while at this point. So I am now at KIPP Charter Schools in New Jersey. I've been there for 4 years now,
Mhm.
and I'm currently in a spot where I thought I was leaving New York at the end of November, so in just about a month from now. And
Mhm.
then, based on some circumstances here in the city, I'm now going to stay through at least May of next year.
Okay.
And I've always known that this was really like the last year I wanted to be in this role. I'm just not growing that much
Mhm.
anymore, and there just aren't many opportunities to grow. But also realizing now that I'm 30 that these decisions start to close some doors. and really start to like set the trajectory for the next 30 years. And just
30,
trying to be,
30.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. That my heart bleeds for you, brother.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, hopefully if I could just work for 25, that would be okay. But yeah, but I think I'll always work in some way. So I
Yeah.
do enjoy it. And it's the biggest thing I'm looking for at this point is financially, I'm in a comfortable place where I don't need to make the decision like solely based on salary or solely based on location. It's really just trying to be somewhere that I feel like I'm growing and being challenged, and then
Mhm.
also just a place I'm like personally convicted by the message and just what the purpose is. And what I'm debating now is how much of that I'll ever be able to find working for somebody else, and how
Yep.
much of that is something that I've just got to create on my own. So just wrestling through those options. I've thought about grad school a decent amount, potentially getting back into chiropractics, into the health field, which would be a 3-year program. And
Yep.
then you have to go find a place to start your own practice and potentially like set some really solid roots and just be established somewhere is one possibility. Looked at some international stuff now based on Hana and just trying to find that balance with her being from Ethiopia,
Mhm.
and trying to figure out a way that we can both kind of stay connected with our families and be in work we enjoy. And then there are also some interesting startups here in New York. But
That's
my
a lot.
biggest fear is
You got a lot of moving parts.
there's a lot going on. Yeah. And then the biggest thing is you never like I hate the job search in the sense that I limit myself to whatever I see posted on a job board and
Mhm.
I expect that to be the perfect job. And I need to know what I'm looking for first and then go attack those ideas specifically instead of just being a consumer of whatever they're trying to define for me to work at. So
Yeah, so that's the Facebook approach, right? The posting on
right.
Facebook approach. Yeah, no, I everyone hates the job search, and I think that's
Mhm.
part of the magic in terms of what I can kind of help with. And it was really eye opening for me to help all three of my kids. And going back a couple of years now, when they got out of school, get them jobs, coach them through the interview process, the search process, what that all entails, and then after that, helping them start all three of them their own companies. They all have
Mhm.
LLCs right now. They're all little mini entrepreneurs, and when I did that, it was like an epiphany, like a knock in the head. I was like, wow, they're really benefiting from this information, and there's a lot of stuff that I know just from helping people for 30 years find work that I
Mhm.
just assumed everybody knew, and nobody does.
Yep.
So it was kind of weird. It's cool and weird all at the same time. But I think what you're talking about is exactly where I've decided to start with the 7 pillars thing, which is, what is your purpose? What
Mhm.
what are you here for? And not to get all cliche or weepy or anything like that, but it's like, why am I focusing my professional energy anywhere other than where I belong, which is typically something that shines, something that wakes you up in the morning with a smile, but it's also more often than not helping other people in some capacity, right? Serving others.
Mhm.
And so that whole idea of, if I'm going to make money, if I'm going to collect a paycheck, or I'm going to generate revenue, if it's my own company, what's the purpose of it? And so it sounds like you're kind of deep in that thought, and you found it sounds like the woman of your dreams, which is awesome.
Right.
Congratulations. And
Yeah.
may that just kind of flow.
Yeah.
But where are you at with that? What are you doing to find that purpose out, and how deep are you?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's one of the things I've realized is one thing to have an idea and one thing to think about what I do want to do, but then it's another one to actually like replicate that life and imitate it for a little bit. So
Yep.
trying to connect with, so I'm actually going to get chiropractor adjustments right now because my body's falling apart a little bit.
Right.
So yeah, so it's like not only am I going to go there and get adjusted, but it's also like, hey, walk me through what the day to day looks like and what it looks like to go to school and what the work life balance looks like and those things. So trying to approach it from that angle with the chiropractics, and then also with some of these other not for profits. I've started to reach out to them and see if there's any way I can support them just part time or on the weekends. Just
Mhm.
trying to get some more exposure to just their business model and just their culture, and then also just what kind of skills they need and whether or not I have those. And I think you kind of create your own momentum, you create your own connections, and just constantly trying to do that. It was one thing to read a bunch of books about this and to mope about it and sit at home and think about it. And now it's all right, it's time to really get this thing rolling. And you were one of the first ones I called when that gear switched. So.
Yeah, no, thank you. One of the things I set up on the website, and I'm waiting on some final edited footage. The stuff that's in the video categories on the site now are replaceable. They're kind of place marks. The content is good, but I'm not a fan of the quality of the video. And we shot some really high quality stuff with cameras and lights and everything, and it's being edited right now. But there's a place underneath the main video on the site now that has a professional track. And if you drop your name in there and click the button, it'll bring you to a workbook. And the workbook is just that, finding your professional purpose. It's a 7-question exercise, and I would invite you to try it. And I'd love to get some feedback, because it takes what you're talking about and it just kind of lays it out in a framework. Like, answer these 7 questions and then do these certain things. It'll take you 30 to 60 minutes. Sit down in a quiet room, take a few breaths, no distractions, and just be honest with yourself. And I think you might get an epiphany. It might flush some stuff out. It may just be a repetition of some of the things you've already done, but I think it might be a valuable exercise. And I recommend it to everybody. Because as I was kind of formulating the framework of how I could help people online, this idea came to me. It's like, well, the first thing you need to do is do this. Just like look in the mirror and say, who am I? What do I like to do? What do I love to do? What am I good at? And where do those things kind of intersect?
Yep.
And can I find a way to do that in such a way that I'm serving other people without any expectation in return, and then let the money come, And that's kind of, I don't know if that sounds a little hippie-ish or whatever, but give it a shot. Give it a shot. I think it might be a valuable exercise. And I'd love to hear your feedback. So tell me a little bit more about how I can help in terms of, flushing some of these thoughts out or giving you some direction.
Yeah, I think what I'm showing, the way I've kind of done my career search the whole time is I've picked a job, but it's always been a way to keep a lot of doors open and keep a lot of flexibility. And that's one way to live a safe career and to always kind of cover yourself, but it's not a way to ever really own what you're doing and to have just like a lot of growth and opportunity and true ownership. And I think I'm trying to figure out that balance of, at some point I've just got to dive all the way in and just commit to something, and just trying to, like, I'm risk averse in some ways. And then I'm also very willing to take risk, but I want to be completely convicted and committed to that decision before I go on, and then I'm ready to go full steam ahead. So just trying to vet those different things. And unfortunately, I think it's similar to a relationship where you're never going to be like 100% sure. You're going to be pretty sure most of the time, but there's always going to be some questions, and just trying to make sure I'm asking myself the right questions before I commit to something, but then also have the confidence after I've gone through that process that I feel pretty good that that I've vetted it and I'm headed in the right direction.
I think of my friend Miles. He said to me years ago about this risk entrepreneurship thing. He's like, "You're just a lot better at, risk than I am." And I'm like, or a lot worse. Taking a risk is, I think you're at 30, you're probably at a place now where you're like, well, I thought this and I thought that, and I thought about security and I thought about risk and all that. And the more that I go through life, the more I understand that everything's a risk.
Yep.
And the only way to avoid risk is to stick your head in the sand, like dig a hole and just hide. You don't have kids, you're not married yet. You sounds like you've been saving your money. You're not throwing your money around. You're not like living a crazy life. So it's like, if you're going to take a risk, what better time than now,
Right.
And so it's mitigating the risk by research and doing stuff like this, talking to people like me. And, I remember when I started my first company, I was building a house. It was $1 million home. I had kids. It was just like, from the outside looking in, it was the worst time in the world to start a business. But I was like, but I know this stuff really well. I just worked for a guy for 6 years and I did everything. And it's like, I had this sense that it was just time to do this. And it worked out great, you know, and then I ran into hardship later on. And as life comes at you over and over and over again, it's not a question of, are you ready? It's just a question of jumping, you know, but jumping, you know, and if you jump and you fail, so what? Just fail fast, you know, and jump out and do something else. So tell me more about this idea of entrepreneurship. Are you close to that, or is that still a couple years down the road?
Yeah. So what I've found, so my dad is a small business owner and has been since I was 3, I think. So similar to how you talked about it, it's one of those things where like that is your whole worldview and that's your whole exposure, and you just assume everybody's gone through that. And it took me about 2 days at GE to realize that that's not the normal mindset for everybody. And you like the light bulb kind of went off then for the first time. And I think there's definitely the work-life flexibility they talk about. Like I've seen the other side of that, and it shifts much more work than life a lot of the time. But it is just that the knowledge that you own every part of the business and all of the strategy. And I am competitive, and there is just that like challenge component of like having this like very clear metric of I'm only doing a good job almost if the business is doing well and my employees have like a sustainable life and the customers are happy. And there are just ways to really evaluate that. And what I'm struggling with right now is, does the business I'm in have to be completely inherently good? Am I building wells somewhere, or are there ways that you can have like a very community building business in auto repair or whatever that becomes, and just trying to wrestle through that. But yeah, I think it's the idea of waking up every day and being challenged and knowing you've got to have your A game, and knowing that the tough questions are going to stop with you, and there's nobody else to really go to above that. And I think I've learned a lot of skills, but I don't think I'm ever going to get that chance in like the corporate environment, no matter how high you get. And when I say corporate, I mean like the public businesses, the big.
You know, it's interesting. You know, hindsight being 2020, I look back and it's easy to kind of see where things come together. And you know, my daughter asked me, I did a podcast with Caroline, which is really cool, the Get a Helmet podcast. I don't know if you've listened to it or not. It's Life is Hard, Get a Helmet. And she's done like 13 of them, and she's sponsored now by Yoga Today or some yoga entity. So she's gaining some momentum. But she was asking me about those decisions and like, were you scared, Dad? And I'm like, no, I was just stupid. Like ignorance is bliss is a cliche for a reason, you know?
Yep.
But I think you learn what you need to learn after a number of years. If you're inclined to be an entrepreneur, if it's part of your future, you get to a point where you're like, well, I work for GE, I work for this company, I work for this big 4 firm, this consulting firm. I've been to small companies. I've gathered enough experience professionally to be able to say, I think I can go learn the rest of this stuff on my own. And experience is the best teacher, right? So if I just kind of push the experience thing and jump out and do whatever, I'm not articulating this well, but I used to represent a lot of consultants in the placement business that would spend 5, 6, 7 years with Ernst & Young or Arthur Andersen, back when there was a Big 8 and then Big 6 and Big 4, all the big consulting firms, the Bain Capitals, the McKinseys, those guys. And after a while, they're like, I don't need this corporate entity anymore. That was a great experience. But now I have this framework of friends. I have this network. I've got all this library of methodology and experience and projects delivered on time and all this instruction and all this, you know, these 6 customers that I've brought from beginning to end. And so the rest of it's really just up to me. And I want to control the quality of the delivery. I don't want to deal with the politics of those large entities anymore. I want total control of the quality of whatever it is that I'm serving my client with, whoever that client is. And it sounds like you're kind of there.
Yep.
And so the idea is, how do you jump from where you are, which is, I guess, the perception of a stable situation with a salary, the benefits and that kind of stuff, to this risky kind of entrepreneurial thing where what am I going to do for benefits? And what if I don't make rent 1 month or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
How prepared are you for that? I mean, what do you got in the bank? How many months do you have to live if you don't generate anything?
Yeah, I mean, if there was no business involved at all, we're probably talking. And part of it too is I would probably get out of the most expensive city in the country. It would be
Move to
step
San
number one.
Francisco? No.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that is yeah, I would have like a year or two. So yeah, so I've got the flexibility there.
Yeah, that's way more than enough. I think you know, when I did it, actually I got a big check from the sale of my mentor's company. So I had quite a bit of stability, but I don't even remember thinking about that. I just remember feeling like I'm ready. I'm ready to
Mm-hmm.
do this. So, you know, what have you done to, have you thought through incorporation? Have you thought through any business ideas? I mean, back to your question about, you know, the garage or car repair or what auto body or whatever. You can build sustainable revenue in any industry, in any service, with any product, and then take that energy and those profits or a portion of those profits and do good things.
Right.
So you don't have to be Mother Teresa while you're generating revenue. You can be Mother Teresa at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or on the weekends, or, you know, take a few days off. So those two are not mutually exclusive in my mind.
Yep.
So the chiropractic thing is interesting. There's a guy that my girls go to down the road. He is an incredibly competent individual and a really nice guy. He was actually played third base in the Yankees farm system for a long time. So he's an athlete.
Yep.
And he treats you like you're an athlete, which
Mm-hmm.
because I am and because the girls are, it's kind of cool. But he's also studying up on Reiki and massage and meditation and holistic and herbal medicinal solutions. So he's a very very interesting guy. And
Mm-hmm.
he when you started talking about chiropractic, knowing what I know about you, I was thinking about him. You know, he does quite a bit of good while he's doing chiropractic, but he's not limited to chiropractic at all.
Yep.
You know, so that kind of thing. And I don't know what expenses he has. I don't know what it costs him to rent his building or hire these other people that work for him. But I would think that in part, like you're going to do today, you know, pick the brains of people that are doing what it is that you want to be successful doing, that are already successful. You know, that's the whole
Mm-hmm.
mentor apprentice thing. Is your mindset, in your mind, are you set up to think along those lines? Like, I just got to go find a mentor that's doing successfully what I want to do and just kind of pick his or her brain?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been going to a chiropractor now for 16 or 17 years back in Cincinnati. And so it's a guy, Dr. Brickner, out there, where we always schedule the adjustment right before lunch. And then I'll go and grab a bite to eat with him afterwards and
Nice.
talk for an hour. So yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's been really helpful. And he's obviously like a big part of why it's something I'm considering, is I've seen what he's been able to do. And you hear about the different people that have a chiropractor like that, and it's much more relationship based and much less hey, I'm gonna come in once a year when I'm feeling miserable and grab a pill. And it's just much more like proactive healthcare. And like I started pre-med at college and then shadowed a couple doctors and was like, yeah, this isn't it. But then chiropractics was a little closer to what I was looking for.
Yeah, I think those guys, what I see them struggle with if I can bundle them all into, you know, caregivers, is two things. One is you're trading time for money, you know, and every doctor I've ever gone to is late. You know, you're in the waiting room and then they're in a hurry, and they seem to always, the good ones seem to always want to spend more time with you, but they can't because they don't have any more time.
Right.
And they run out of time all the time. And then the second thing is, in healthcare space in general, is, because I know this through my daughters and my own personal existence, is everything is moving towards preventative care as opposed to let's just slap a Band-Aid on it or take these pills and that symptom will go away. Well, the problem still exists. It doesn't just still exist, it's getting worse. And we're throwing stuff at the symptoms of the problem. And I think this is what a lot of us do in life, is we throw stuff at the symptoms and we never really get to the root of the problem. So whether it's your job search or your relationship or becoming an entrepreneur, you want to get to the root of the issue. What am I trying to solve here, as opposed to, make the pain go away for a day,
Right.
So what do you like? You're teaching kids now?
So I'm the school business administrator.
What does that
and
mean?
have been a part-time teacher a couple times. We're real short, but yeah. So I manage the budget, and I do a lot of the facilities, safety, security, nutrition side of things. So pretty much everything that happens in a school besides the instructional content.
Okay. And how old are the kids?
So I've actually just switched to a elementary middle school in the past few weeks. Before that, I was at a high school, and now I've got K-8.
And so how's that work? What does that work do for you?
That's a great question. So I love the interactions with the kids.
Yeah.
That is definitely my favorite part of it. I got to do a lot of that at the high school level, and it was fun because it was a lot of conversations like this, except they're 12 years younger, so they're looking at the college side, and I felt like the grizzled veteran a little bit at that point, going through the college search. So those conversations were a lot of fun. Then it would be time to do my actual job, and those times weren't quite as fun. It was a lot of Excel spreadsheets and doing travel booking and those kind of things. And I was definitely more than capable of doing it, but feel like I don't want to say it's below me, but it just wasn't challenging work.
So you're by education, you're a finance guy or an econ guy?
I'm an accounting major without a CPA. So,
okay. Yeah. I knew you were a numbers guy, a finance guy, but it sounds like the numbers are starting to bore you a little bit.
Yep. And it's kind of funny. So I started out pre-med, was in that for a year and a half. Orgo makes you think about that a little bit, and then shadowing some doctors. And then my dad had the great advice of, well, if you're going to go into business, you should be an accountant, because accountants can do finance jobs and finance jobs can't do accounting jobs.
Yeah.
Which was great advice. But then everybody looked at me and saw my degree and was like, oh, that's an accountant. And then I looked at what accountants actually do, and it's like, I'm definitely not an accountant. So,
well, I think it's kind of like a law degree, right? I think that your educational background and that accounting experience will come in handy, particularly if you start a business. Because one of the things that, I had to look at a bunch of P&Ls and balance sheets and, cash flow and all that stuff just puts me to sleep. I can't see it. And I'm not a details guy. I'm a bigger picture guy. I'm an idea guy. I'm more of a solution, thought process kind of guy. And I think those are kinds of things you have to really be honest with yourself about. At some point, it's like, okay, I'm good with math, but I don't like playing around with these mundane numbers all day. I want to interact with people. Well, but that experience is definitely going to come in handy, because most people that start small businesses, and I've done a lot of ad hoc mentorship to aspiring entrepreneurs, and I'm actually just starting to volunteer at the local SCORE office, which is I can't remember what the acronym is, but it's organization of retired executives. Most of these guys and gals are retired, and I'm not, but they're all bringing their life and business experience to this 501c nonprofit organization funded by the state and the federal government and the Small Business Association. And they just see people with ideas and coach them through flushing out whether they should be an entrepreneur, and if so, how to become one and start a particular business. And everybody brings a different level of expertise. There's a restaurant guy, there's a products guy, there's an engineering guy, there's a gal that worked for the AT&T for 20 years. And I sat down with a guy who was head legal counsel for AT&T for 20 years, and this guy's given free legal advice. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But that whole thing is like, everyone that flounders or fails everyone says it's capitalization, it's money. And yeah, that's got something to do with it. But most people they're not willing to go through the diligence of a SWOT analysis or a business plan or a cash flow analysis or a demographic study of their market and a deep dive into who their customers are. And then the marketing plan in terms of, are people going to buy this? And if so, why are they going to buy it from me? And then who are these people? And there's a whole massively diligent exercise before you spend a dime. And most people either don't understand what that exercise is, or they're not willing to do that work because they think my idea is fantastic and it's just going to sell itself.
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever seen that happen. So, and you got an accounting background, so you're at a very good position to be able to sit down with pad and paper, old school, and just knock this stuff out and say, put some hypotheticals down, And so
Mhm.
have you done any of that work, or have you just kind of thought, I know that I do need to do that, or is this news to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's easy to kind of have that 30-second, 5-minute conversation in your head. It's another thing to really sit down for 2 hours and just really list it all out and just switch into full entrepreneurship mode.
Yeah.
I actually did it this past January. I was looking at potentially opening a Fleet Feet franchise, like a running store,
Uh-huh.
with all that apparel, and did a lot of analysis on that, and talked to corporate headquarters about franchising, and met with a couple of shop owners and just talked about inventory and those things. And
Mm-hmm.
I just felt my brain switch over to that side, and it was kind of like, oh wow, like this is fun.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the light bulb moment a little
Yeah.
bit, where it was like, yeah, this is definitely the sweet spot for me. With chiropractics, I've done it a decent amount. Where I'm struggling with that whole concept right now is I can come up with all these great ideas and then kind of have to hit pause for 3 years as I go through school.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's dragging me down a little bit, is I would love to be like, I want to be a chiropractor and then start doing that tomorrow. And
Yeah.
that would be way easier. It's this idea that, oh yeah, I can decide to do it. And then I've got to wait 3 years and go to class for 3 more years and then start all over again somewhere. And that's definitely caused some hesitation for sure.
Yeah, no, Hannah, my middle daughter, who I don't think you've met, she's
Mhm.
she's a nutrition coach or a wellness, or I hesitate to give her a title because she's like, Dad, I don't want you to call me that. I'm like, well, whatever. But she's been a self-taught nutrition expert since she was 12.
Okay.
And body image stuff, and some insecurity caused her to dig into her own well-being. And she's been an athlete her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And dancer, yoga, volleyball, really high level athlete. And so she started experimenting on herself with food, and she's now an expert. She literally, I don't think she could read anybody else's stuff and learn much unless
Okay.
unless it's new knowledge for everybody. And so she's healing people now with their diets, with food. She's doing some cooking, she's doing some coaching, and she's had to go online because she's not a certified nutritionist. She's not a
Yep.
registered nurse. And she
Mm-hmm.
got a cease and desist order from the state of Florida's healthcare department. They stung her. They showed up under a guise of being
Okay.
a woman with gut health problems at a restaurant, and she introduced herself, and they slapped her with a $800 fine and a badge. Yeah, it took me a half a day to get her off the ledge, because I'm like, honey, this is not about fair. These people at the healthcare department, like the CDC and the FDA, they're scared of people like you. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
put them out of business.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of time. So she had to shift her focus online, because the legality of it was you can't speak to people one-on-one about the health benefits of food.
Mm-hmm.
That's against the law in the state of Florida. How
Okay.
ridiculous is that?
That's
right?
crazy.
So she, and I'm circling back around with this story because she's like, I've been telling her to get online for a long time, because I thought the same thing with chiropractic or the doctor is, how do I serve many more people
Mm-hmm.
without boxing myself in terms of trading time for money? It's like,
Right.
how many appointments can you have in a day? How many people can you see in a day? How many people can you see in a week? Right. But if I put this stuff in a bottle, which is kind of like what I'm trying to do with 7 Pillars on the professional advice side, and the bottle is a book or a series of videos or audios, or maybe it's one-on-one coaching to some extent, but it's also auditoriums with tons of students. And now I can charge a lot less money because I can deliver that product or that service in whatever bottle makes sense online for $10 or $100.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can sell it to 10,000 people, so maybe one of the things that you should think about, Alan, and I've done this transition, is like, as a recruiter, what I'm doing with you now is one-on-one, right?
Yep.
It's the most efficient way to do what I do. Actually, the most efficient way is as I was in the room with you and we were face to face. The second best way is what we're doing right now. The third best way is just take what I'm doing, record it, and make it
Mm-hmm.
available to 10,000 people, you know?
Right.
And there's like 4 billion people on the internet right now. And in a couple of years, there's going to be 8 billion people. I mean, how many of those people do you really need to serve to make a living? You know,
Yep.
1/1 millionth of that population, you know, it's like, it's insane, you know? And then you can supplement that by, you know, doing mastermind kind of things. Like if you want to sit down with me one-on-one, it's, you know, we'll do the whole weekend at some resort and it'll be $25,000 and you'll come out of that thing a new person.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the tip of the spear, right? That's the top of the pyramid. And down here is the book, you know?
Yep.
And that workbook that I pointed you to in terms of finding out your purpose, that's free. You know, it's like 15 pages. It's a 1-hour exercise. And I frankly think you're probably far deeper into your thought process, and you're a very responsible young man. You're a very smart young man. You do the right thing. Most people are not in your position. Most people don't even give this a thought. They go through their whole lives not even thinking about this stuff. They just show up to work every day. They collect a paycheck. 35 years later, they retire. And it's like, what did I do? You know?
Yep.
So this whole idea, I applaud what you're doing. I applaud the fact that you reached out to me and said, let's talk, because most people don't even ever get there. But maybe part of what you can think through is, well, the classic chiropractor model, why do I have to adhere to that model? Why don't I consider making a whole brand new model of delivering chiropractic service or holistic health service or whatever it is that you want to do? You know, why limit yourself to the model that exists today just because it's the way everyone else is doing it? Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
It's a whole different way. It might create a whole different entity for you. It might create a whole different delivery model for you. It might not, but it's just a thought. It's kind of like a seed that I just wanted to kind of plant.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely does.
So what's your time frame on this? What triggered your phone call to me? Was it an event or a series of events?
Yeah, so where I'm at right now, so the thought was leaving in November, and then I got asked to help TA a leadership and faith program for the next 9 months. That'll go through November of next year, or not November, of May of next year. So I've got like an 8-month window, and then talking to Hannah about engagement and wedding dates and those things. Apartment is coming up, and it's just all these different calendar things to figure out. And the work thing is just kind of affected by all and implicates all of them, and just really want to start to get that sorted out as early as possible. And you don't want to get to May and then start having these thoughts and conversations. I really want to know exactly what I want to do and have time to connect with all these people as soon as possible. Where I'm at right now is I'm switched over to a different school, and really am not feeling as challenged there. I built up a lot of social capital at the high school I was at over 2 years, and was getting pulled into a lot more high level meetings, and there was a lot to fix, and we stabilized things there. And then once you stabilize stuff, then there's not as much to fix anymore, and then things get a little more automated and easy. And I was ready to mix it up, but now I've realized that I don't really want to go back and start that from square one at a new school. So I've looked at a couple different places, and I've talked to some consulting firms about getting back over there for at least a year or two and doing some change management work and leveraging what I've done the past couple of years at the schools. And then I've looked at a couple of entrepreneurship programs, and they have some operations roles there as well. So I've got some different options, and I'm just really trying to hone in a little more. The nice part with the chiropractic thing is it's pretty flexible on they're on a quarter by quarter basis on when they accept new people. So I don't have to make that decision by August of the year. I can make that decision 4 different times. So there's some flexibility on that side, which is helpful.
That's good.
But I'm also just I've got another buddy from Notre Dame that we've talked about search funds and taking over a business and doing some turnarounds and those things, which that's also an exciting thought to me too. So it's kind of that debate of, do I wait 3 years and go through the schooling and be kind of tied down to one particular place for for grad school, and then potentially even if I'm opening my own practice to then really be locked into a place for a longer period. Obviously, there's more flexibility if I take it online, um, but thinking through that side, or do I just get the ball rolling and start on like a small business turnaround now today and just start to make that happen?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny, just from my perspective, from the outside looking in, when you talk about chiropractic, it sounds like you are a big fan of the practice itself, but you're talking yourself out of the educational piece.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yep.
And that's fine. You know, I share that with you just to be, just to be candid.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big commitment. You know, it sounds like what I hear is the entrepreneurial bug is like festering within you. It's coming to the surface. It's like, I got to try that. I got to give that a shot,
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Yep.
whatever that might mean. So, but you've got marriage, location, and professional stuff going on all at the same time. So,
Right.
what does she do? What does Hannah do?
Yeah, so she is in banking. She's in finance right now, and she's been in that for the past, let's see, 15 years. Yeah, 10, 15 years. Yeah. So
Is she how important is her career to her in the grand scheme of this?
yeah, I think working is very important to her. I think yeah, so she's trying to figure that out, and she's from Ethiopia too, and they've had a big political renaissance over the past 4 or 5 months with a new prime minister, and there's just a lot of hope around that too. And she's trying to figure out ways to support that growth, and continue to build that. And we're trying to figure out if that happens stateside or potentially if that involves being back over there, and then
Like
in
an advocate,
Addis.
an,
Yeah.
an advocate for the people of Ethiopia in some
Yep.
capacity?
In some kind, whether that's financial or like political or just social exposure.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so talking through that, and then the idea of it's one thing to open a business in the US. It's another thing to bring some of the lessons and experiences and skills we have from here over there. And there is just a lot of opportunity and potential there. And that's one of the questions we've tossed around a little bit too.
That sounds potentially cool. Yeah, that sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah.
You'd be well, from a process standpoint and an experience standpoint, you might be one of the smarter guys in the room over there, huh? Just
Right.
bringing a modernization to whatever it might be. You know,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's water or food or education or some sort of professional curriculum of some kind.
Yep.
But she's flexible with regard to all these moving parts. She's not a limiting factor for you. She's going to be a contributing and encouraging factor for you.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And it's definitely one of those things where I don't just want to move out to North Dakota just because I want to. So yeah, she definitely has like a part in all of the conversations, but
Yeah.
she's been very supportive through this. So that's helpful. It does, it gives all of this more gravity now. And I'm sure you felt it when you started your own business with 3 kids, where you're not just feeding yourself anymore. And yeah, there's just a certain expectation, you feel the weight on your shoulders a little more when there's some
Yeah,
other people affected by it.
well, you were a lot more responsible than I was at your age. Well, maybe not at your age, but go back 5 years. You know, Caroline said to me on the podcast about the sphere thing, or like, you graduated from college, Dad. You weren't scared. I'm like, I don't remember being scared at all, but I definitely remember being ignorant. You know, and I think ignorance takes the place of fear. You know, as soon as you get a little bit smart, that's when fear becomes a little bit more available to you, just because, wow, I'm aware.
Right.
You know, so but yeah, I remember when I knew I was going to be a dad, my whole life changed. I mean, I went from wandering about as a nice guy that with no direction to a aggressively dedicated professional recruiter, and I glommed on, luckily, to a mentor. And I really, it sounds like you are inclined to do this, but and maybe I function as such a person for you in some capacity as a mentor, but, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, the chiropractor guy that you're talking about in Cleveland, you know, you're doing the right thing with him, picking his brain, spending time with him. And maybe it's convincing you that 3 years of education is a little bit too much of a pill to swallow to wait for all this other stuff. But you're 30. I mean, you could do that for 3 years. You could do something for 5 years. You do something else after that. I mean, there's going to be multiple iterations I mean, you and I have already talked about this crossroads, what, 3 to 5 times?
Yep.
And you're only 30.
Right.
I suspect we'll do this again a few more times, Alan.
Yeah, just a little bit of ADD for sure. So
no, it's great. I think it's great. I'm trying to figure stuff out, and I'm 57. So it never stops. The only way, and again, it's a cliche, but the only way you can fail is if you just stop trying. And I just don't see you ever doing that. So, what specific questions do you have? Let's get tactical. We've talked strategy, and I think the only thing that I would dissuade you from, and of course, this is just my opinion, is grad school. I just think you got enough education, unless you need a specific chiropractic or a specific medical or a specific, forensic accounting, unless you need some sort of specific certifiable degreed skill, I would continue my education online. I would continue my education in life. I think college right now for 17 and 18-year-olds is a complete waste of time. You might be the last generation that college made any sense for at all. And I suspect you would probably agree that most of the stuff that you really know right now, that you love, that you learned, you did not learn in school.
Right.
So that's just my 2 cents on the postgraduate degree thing.
Yep.
Especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur. Nobody in the entrepreneurship world, most of the guys that you see out there, the Tony Robbins, the Mark Cubans, the Richard Bransons, I don't even know if those guys went to college. Most of them didn't. Oprah, I mean, these are powerful, successful entrepreneurial spirits, and you just don't learn that stuff in school. But anyway, that's another soapbox that I'll jump off that quick, because we'll be here for hours if I don't. But specifically, what kind of tactical stuff can I help with?
Yeah, I think the thing I'm trying to do right now is, I do realize it's a blessing to be paid by somebody to work and to learn, and trying to figure out different ways to leverage that work experience and that time. Like you said, you had 6 years doing that exact work before you then went out and started your own thing. Just trying to be very intentional about ways to continue to grow and challenge myself and learn in my current job, prior to taking that leap, is one thing. Just different questions I should be asking myself, different exercises I should be putting myself through in those times to just try and make the most of working there, not just for their benefit, but for my own as well.
I think the 2 things that I try to share with almost everyone I talk to that falls into the category of young, relatively speaking, are the networking skill, which you seem to be very good at, but in a conscious way, in terms of, when I started recruiting, I was up in Boston, and the first 3 years of my recruiting life was in Boston. I was recruiting software engineers inside of 495 and 128, very, very, very focused. And I developed lots of relationships. And then I left and I went to Florida. And then I opened up the market in Florida. And then I opened up the market in the Carolinas. And then I started a business that did national work. Well, my network of people who loved me and trusted me and knew me shifted over and over and over again. And I left that network on the table. Like, if I stayed in Boston and did what I did for 30 years, imagine the nurturing that could have happened with the software engineer I placed in 1990 is the chief information officer today. And so I didn't do that or not do that consciously. But I think now, with the technological landscape and the sociological landscape the way it is, don't neglect the relationships that you've already spent time working with. The people there's everyone out there that knows and loves and trusts Alan, know what you're thinking right now. Do they know that you're at this crossroads? And if they don't, let them know, and because it's that whole 6 degrees of separation Kevin Bacon game. Everybody knows somebody. And I can't tell you how many times, Alan, in my career that I have said to somebody, just call the people that you used to work for and let them know that you're contemplating change. And it might be 50% of the time, it might be more than that. that alone has gotten them their next opportunity, because somebody in their network of friends and family said, oh, I didn't know you were looking. I didn't know you were thinking of leaving New York. I didn't know that you were thinking of chiropractic. I didn't know that you were thinking of being an entrepreneur. Well, now that I know that, let's do this. So that can be magical, and it's very simple, and most people don't even consider that. You know, you reach out to a small circle of those people like me, right? What about these people? And what about these people? And so that's a real simple thought, but it's like, stay in touch with the people that you've already invested time in building trust with, and make sure they are aware of your thoughts. Now, the detail with which you go into that conversation is between you and them. Some of this stuff you might want to keep confidential. Some of it's private. Some of it's like, I'm not going to share that with the world. That's your call. But the extent to which there are people out there that maybe should know some of this stuff, create some momentum with that, create some energy with that. I think it's, you might find some value in that. That would be number one.
Okay.
And then, you know, the second thought just jumped out of my head, but gosh, what was it in terms of networking? It'll come back to me. Oh, all of this work that you've done, when we first started talking, were you just graduating when we first started talking, or were you already out in the workforce? Do you remember?
I was probably, by the time we started talking, it was the end of 2 years at GE, and I think was getting ready to come to Ernst & Young at that point. So,
So what have you learned? And this is just, you don't have to answer this now. I just want you to think about it, because I think along the lines of, like, when I went in to talk to my kids 3 or 4 years ago about finding a job, I had all this information that came out in the conversation that I hadn't really consciously thought. I have a framework for this. I have a step-by-step, repeatable process that 90% of this process works for everyone. And 10% of it is circumstantial and specific to you based on your circumstances and your personality and your desires and your way to communicate. But 90% of it's the same. Like almost everything that I just said to you, everybody else that's in transition professionally could potentially benefit from all of it, right?
Yep.
So have I written that down? Have I documented that? I mean, you're a financial guy. There's a repeatable way to go about producing a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet and a cash flow analysis and some sort of operational due diligence that you've done. You've done it in a school, you've done it at GE, you've done it for a consulting firm, you've done it in a number of different places. Where in that work is there a repeatable product that you have in your head that could be sold or delivered to other people that would help them avoid some of the frustration and pain and time that it took you when you went through that for the first time? And I don't know the answer to that, because I'm not a financial guy, but when I started going back to SCORE, they would hand me a workbook or an assessment, what they said to me, Alan, was, we're not going to really teach you much about business that you don't already know. We're just going to teach you how we want the message of what we do at SCORE to be delivered. You know, we don't want to tell people what to do. We want to give advice. We want to listen actively. We want to make suggestions. We're not lending money. We're not dictating what people should do. We're listening and we're guiding. And there's tremendous value in that. But my point is, every single workbook they've given me, every single assessment exercise they've given me, every single video I've watched, I already knew that. But I didn't write it down. I didn't put it in a place where I could say to someone else, you can have this for $5, or you can have this for $100, or you can have this for $10. And if you want me to walk you through doing it, that'll be another $100 or $1,000. But I think you probably already have some very, very valuable products in your head. And, you know, software engineers like to say things like, if you have to do something more than twice, automate it.
Yep.
Document it. And so I think you probably already have some products to sell. You just haven't created them.
Right.
Does that resonate with you?
Yep. It's like, even as we're talking, I'm listening to everything you're saying, but then in the back of my head, it's just kind of like zipping around thinking about all that different stuff. So yeah, there are definitely a bunch of things.
Well, and one of the things I tell people about doing a business plan or doing a SWOT analysis, it's not even the result of, or the result of the SWOT analysis, the decision that comes from the analysis, or the decision to open or not open a business based on doing a business plan. It's the diligence and the rigor of the exercise. Because just like what we're doing right now, if you were to sit down and say, I'm going to become a chiropractor, at least for the purposes of this exercise, and I'm going to spend 2 hours mapping that out in the form of a business plan. At the end of that exercise, you're going to have your answer.
Right.
That's the way to get your answer, is to go through the exercise. And it might be a SWOT analysis, it might be a business plan, it might be something else, but it's like, okay, sit down with that product idea and flesh it out over the weekend, and you might have a business.
Yep.
Chances are you do. We all do. But we're buying this stuff from other people, and we've already done it ourselves. So
right.
Those are the two things that I think, if I could leave you with two: the networking thing, and the what products have I already developed. I just haven't created them; they're just in my head.
Yep.
So, what else can I help with, Alan?
Yeah, I think where to begin. How long of a runway do you typically look at decisions from when you're trying to figure out whether or not it's a good decision? Do you look at, where does this lead me in 2 years? Where does this lead me in 5 years, 10 years? Like, what kind of time frame do you consider things over, and how big of a plan do you kind of put things in?
I think you'd be amazed at how little planning I do.
Okay.
And I think you and I are different that way. I'm not suggesting that my way is correct. But I think my experience, I have the benefit, or the hardship, if you will, of experience. And I went, life-wise, this up and down. I think you know a little bit about my domestic turbulence a few years back. And that was a humbling experience. I made a ton of money, and then I lost all of it. And now I'm back making it again. And I don't know that I ever planned. I always think about my baseball career. I played baseball all the way through high school. I didn't play in college. I kind of lost interest in the game, but I was pretty good. And I just remember my successes always came with 3 and 2 counts. It was like my back needed to be up against a wall. Like, I found out I was going to be a dad. I changed my entire life 180 degrees, like overnight. I seem to need to be in a 3 and 2 count. That's my nature. And so sometimes I put myself there, subconsciously, unconsciously. So, I think generally speaking, people wait way too long to do stuff. Because I think if you're 80% done thinking about it, you're ready. Don't wait to 90 or 100. It's like the same thing they say about product delivery and shipping stuff, and, publishing that book or whatever it is. It's time to expose yourself to the reality of whether you're ready. Just do it. If you got a year's worth of money in the bank, you're ready to do anything. You're ready to jump out of a plane. So if I can encourage you at all, I would say, if you're, it's almost contrary, but if you're really fearful about something, that's probably a signal that it's something you should try to do. It almost conflicts with your own humanity. So I think you're never going to not plan enough. That's not your nature. I know you well enough to know that you're just a diligent guy with regard to thinking things through and planning. I would think that you're probably, what you need a little help with is just push. Just take a risk, man. Just do it. You take a risk and fail for a year, and you're 31.
Right.
So what? You got a woman that clearly is supportive of you, and all of these things we're talking about. That's the most important thing in the world. If you pick the right one of those, you pick the right wife, wow, everything gets easier. And God bless her if she's supportive of all this stuff. So I would say don't plan anymore. I would just say, do. Yeah, I can hear it. I can hear you're ready. You're ready to do something. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and you're like I said, your nature is not to be rash about these kinds of things. So, if I was concerned about you not being ready for something, I would say be cautious, learn some more stuff, study some more, do some more diligent work. You've been pretty diligent your whole life, as I can see it. So I would just say my vote would be to just jump, whatever that means, and just make that part of your decision process.
Mm-hmm. That all makes sense. And then, I've been thinking about all these thoughts all the time for the past like year, and now that we're talking through them, it's just affirming that like, there's only so much you can talk about it and think about it, and then at
Yeah.
some point it is just like, yep, time to pull the trigger and just get after it. And I don't know, the 3-2 count is very applicable. There have been a lot of times where I'm in first gear, second gear a lot, where I get the things done that I need to get done, and
Yeah.
but there's more in the tank. Yeah, no worries. It's that Florida weather. So
yeah, I just looked at my red face thinking I'm getting hot.
You're just in the zone. So
yeah, well, I get kind of heated about this stuff. It's pretty cool, watching people's minds start clicking when you share ideas with them. But yeah, no, I think your thought process is sound, and I do appreciate the fact that you thought of me when it comes time to transition. But go do that kind of passion exercise and purpose exercise, and see if that flushes anything out for you. And then, digest what it is that we've talked about. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot on the video to ask me more questions or whatever, because if you don't have any, that's fine. But I think, I think you're going to kill it no matter what you do. I feel that very strongly. So whatever, to whatever extent that's helpful, that encouragement, I mean it sincerely.
And it means a lot, just like we talked about, you get more confidence from making sure you've asked the right questions and leaned on the right people with experience. And it's a huge benefit to have you as a resource, and not only just as somebody who's thought about it, but also somebody I know that's actually like lived it and done it. And you're not just a speaker about this stuff, you're experienced in it, and you've gone through these struggles and gone through these questions, and you've come out on the other side and still want to do it again. So that's definitely encouraging.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a lot of this stuff is, like I said, the experience with my kids. So my son's 21, Hannah's 24, and Caroline just turned 30. So, and once I helped them, they all came to me and said, can you help so-and-so? So-and-so wants to talk to you, my friend of a friend of a friend. And so that exercise, like these epiphanies, these kids are having these epiphanies, like, Mr. Aylward, could you say that again? I got to write that down, and it's, and I think of my dad, it's, the only time plagiarism is wrong is when you're in school, it's
right.
like after you get out of school, that's what you should do.
Yep.
Plagiarize, get a mentor, get somebody who's already done this stuff. And I think that chiropractor guy is good for you. And, the startup stuff that you're talking about with your buddy from Notre Dame, that's a great way. Like the first opportunity that I had with this guy that I worked for 6 years, I found out that my girlfriend at the time was pregnant, and I immediately went out and looked for work. And I was introduced to this guy in my pursuit of recruiting work. And I went in to meet with him, and it became immediately apparent to me that this guy is brilliant. And he said, you want to start a company with me? And I said, well, I don't know what that means. And he said, well, you don't have to know what that means. I'll bring the money, and I'll bring the direction, and you just got to do what I tell you to do. And, I kind of made it clear to him that there were certain lines that I wasn't willing to cross from a ethical standpoint, but other than that, I would do anything. And I wrote contracts. I joined associations. I sold to clients. I recruited. I hired. I trained. I fired. I employed. I did everything. I sat down with the accountants. I sat down with the bankers. I sat down with the lawyers, and sometimes I was the dedicated resource, and sometimes I was just listening. but I was immersed into this starting a business from scratch. And then when I punched 6 years later, that's when I go back to saying I was ready, because I was just like, I just did everything that one needs to know how to do. All I have to do now is just bring a small check to the table and I can do it myself, you know?
Right.
So just keep immersing yourself in those kinds of experiences. I think the GE experiences was good for you. 2 years was enough,
Yeah.
you know, and, but it's nice to have that experience. It's nice to have that perspective. That's a very valuable 2 years. So don't dismiss that. And I think that, just keep doing what you're doing. You're testing the boundaries of what it means to be in the normal workforce. It's like, you're already kind of dismissing the notion that you have to have a boss, that you have to have a benefit plan that someone else delivers to you, that you have to have a bonus structure or a 401k, or you can deploy all of those things on your own. Those are just functions. Those are just assets. Those are just things. And you know, you can cobble all of those together on your own. Don't lean on any of those as perceived securities, because somebody can fire you with no notice tomorrow. You know, the only difference between being an entrepreneur and working for someone else is, instead of one boss, you have a bunch of bosses. They're called customers.
Right.
You know? So it's all this stuff is just how you look at it. You know, it's not necessarily what it is, you know? So anyway, I can philosophize about this all day long, Alan. It's fun stuff.
And I definitely appreciate it.
Any like, in terms of that SWOT analysis concept, are there any obstacles in the O and in SWOT? Are there any obstacles or threats that you're, actually the O is for opportunities, the T is for threats.
Don't get too pessimistic on me. So.
Are there any particular blocks or threats or fearful things that are like, gosh, I'm not looking forward to that?
Yeah, I think honestly, the biggest threat to me is the lack of flexibility potentially on being able to move or being able to transition somewhere. Some of these places, that is one of the big appeals of potentially like the internet side of things, is like you're not tied down to any one physical location. But that is one of the things that constantly bubbles up for me, is like, oh, if I open this practice, or if I open this store, or if I do this, then that like means you're there for a certain amount of time. And that could be a great thing, or it may not be. So, I mean, I've moved this apartment's the longest I've been anywhere. And I've thought I was going to move each year from it, kind of thing. So, that idea of like really committing to a location for a set period of time is a little concerning for sure.
Well, I think, you know, in terms of the online thing, that's not something you have to commit to as a full-time endeavor. I think if you just consider the idea of getting a domain and getting a presence, which people call a website, it comes in various forms. And it's so simple to do now. I mean, I do them myself, and I have no technical knowledge of any kind, and I can give you some direction to help with that if and when you want to do something like that. But put your stuff somewhere online, and you don't have to tell anybody about it. Just start accumulating your stuff online. And your stuff is, you know, what have you learned from teaching these kids that every other child in the world could benefit from? What have you learned from teaching these kids that every other parent in the world could benefit from? It doesn't have to be chiropractic. It doesn't even have to be financial. It could just be life lessons kind of stuff. I mean, you're a good guy. You're helping people, and you look back on the last 10 years of your career, you've got stuff that could be beneficial for other people. Start capturing it, because if you start capturing it now and you look at it like, this could help someone else. I always use the Sherpa analogy. It's like, if you're going to climb that big mountain, you can go do it yourself and maybe die, or you can give this indigenous native called a Sherpa $100, and you'll get up faster. You'll see a lot more cool stuff. You won't die, and you'll come back with a much better experience. It's going to be easier, more enjoyable, and faster. And the only reason he can do that for you is because he's been up that mountain and back down 1,000 times. So anything that you have that makes you a little mini Sherpa in a particular area, if you can save someone some time, if you can avoid some pain or frustration, or you can get somebody somewhere faster, that's worth money. It's worth a lot of money. And so bottle that stuff up and put it online, capture it somewhere. And in another 5 years, you might have a burgeoning business, and it wasn't even your intention to create one. That's how a lot of businesses get created. You can do all this other stuff and still do that an hour a week, 2 hours a week on the weekends. So people call it a side gig, you know, those can often turn into your passion plays. Those can often turn into your, wow, I didn't intend for this to get where it is, but now all of a sudden I have something that somebody might be interested in buying, you know? So, and maybe you've got some ideas as I'm speaking floating around in your head, but we don't put that stuff down. I didn't start putting that stuff down until a couple of years ago. I should have started doing that 30 years ago, you know? So anyway, that might be a nice closing thought. Create some homework for you.
For sure. Yeah, the thought that's been in my I'm sure you listen to Seth Godin a little bit, and he's got one where he talks about all these people say they're bad writers, and I tell them to show me their bad writing, and none of them have any. And I think it is that thought of like, you just need to try. You just need to get started, and it's at 10,000 hours. And even if I don't leverage that 10,000 hours for 20 years, I'll have 0 hours if I don't start now.
Well, you will. And I think what we do is we make the mistake of having a specific intention. Like, I'm going to start this company, or I'm going to do this thing. And it's like in the authorship, I've been doing a ton of writing, and the only difference between my writing today and my writing 2 years ago is that my writing today is based on 2 years of practice, and my writing 2 years ago was my first attempt. I think I'm a pretty good writer, but I know that every time I write something, I'm getting better. And it's like sitting in front of a camera. I might not look at this video after we're done and go, wow, but I know I've already learned something about video production and the Zoom tool and the microphone and the light and the time of day and the look and feel. And I mean, we've accomplished that just because we did this, you know? And you might get off of this call and say, you know, this is a tool that I could probably use to teach kids or teach adults, you know, or whatever. So the doing is the magic, you know? It's like they say, it's not the destination, it's the journey, right? There is no destination. We're here. We're here right now, brother. This is the destination. At least for today. So, well, was that helpful?
This was great. Yeah, it was exactly what I was hoping for. So,
Good.
Good. Really appreciate it. Well, as always, worth the price of admission. So.
Yeah. I get you to put some skin in the game at one of these points. But no, in all seriousness, I think your advocacy in terms of sharing, you know, the 7 pillars concept, putting people in touch with the website. I'm proud of the way it looks right now, and it's just going to get better. And I think the availability of just free resources there is significant enough that I think it would be a valuable thing for anyone your age or anyone inclined to be in transition professionally or in life, which I guess is all of us every day. But I think there's enough valuable nuggets there now. And then there's stuff that you can buy, not much, and it's real cheap. And I'm gonna get better. Like this piece of content here, or chunks of it, might be part of a program at some point, you know, because I don't think we divulged anything that was confidential, did we?
Yeah, no, not really. I'll just I'll work with Hannah and get her seal of approval on anything I talked about her in there. But yeah, besides that, so
I'll overdub the use of her name. We'll call her like Steve or something like that.
Right, exactly. My romantic partner, Steve. So.
Maybe that's not the best. Maybe that's not the best substitute name. But but no, I mean, can you like envision whether somebody that was contemplating a change that was in his mid-20s watching this? Don't you think that would be beneficial to most everyone that was contemplating a transition?
I think the program I'm in right now, we meet with 11 people, the same 11 people every single week, and I I just kind of did a count in my head last week, and 9 of the 11 of us were going through career and job questions and uncertainty.
Mhm.
And just the understanding that somebody else is going through that at the same time helps a ton.
Yeah.
Just even having that community perspective. And then I think just hearing what questions people are asking. So obviously you and I went straight into SWOT analysis, and some people will be like, I have no idea what that is. And they'll
Mhm.
go search, and at first it'll be all of the like strategic assault team stuff. And then they'll be
Mhm.
like, oh, never mind, there's an O in here instead.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just like that exposure to different vocabulary and
Yeah.
those things is, I mean, Google is awesome. I'm pretty good at Excel now just because of Google. And I
Yeah.
think using like this kind of tool and resource and the ability to self research is huge. It makes people pretty dangerous.
Yeah. No, I think the reason that I'm so against college is it's very simple. I mean, when I went to Notre Dame, I think it was 10 grand a year,
Yeah,
and
it's not that anymore.
it's like 70 now. It's
Hmm.
60 or 70 now. I mean, think of that. You come out of school now, you got $250,000 in debt,
Yep.
and you're going to get, what are you going to get out of college? 40 grand? You know,
Right.
when are you going to pay that back? 30
Yep.
years?
Yeah.
And,
15 pounds and yeah, a few
and,
buddies.
and you know what? I can give you maybe 15 domain names and you can get a college education for free,
Yep.
on your own time, at your own pace, like in a year instead of
Hmm.
4. Now, I enjoyed my time at Notre Dame and I met a lot of really nice people. And it's very nice, as I'm sure you know, to be able to say to people, I went to Notre Dame. It's a
Right.
very prideful thing to be able to say. And I've never met anybody that went to Notre Dame that I didn't think highly of. It's an
Hmm.
amazingly wonderful place. But between the cost and, quite frankly, the noise that they're preaching at schools now, even at Catholic universities, I mean, they're talking, they're talking about political issues that are just like nonsense,
Hmm.
and my kids are full of noise. They went to art school. They're like they're as confused could be with regard to our history and our politics and our constitution. And it's just like, let's talk about the foundational issues that are the reason that we are the United States of America. Like, I have to deprogram anyone that comes out of college now. They have
Hmm.
$250,000 in debt, and the stuff that they're learning. I mean, I talk to programmers, Alan, computer science majors. You probably have enough exposure to the work world now to know that Java and C# are the 2 most prolific development languages in industry.
Hmm.
Most of the internal applications written in the world, right, or at least in the United States, are written, unless they're legacy applications that are still in COBOL or Fortran, which do exist. They're C# and Java. Now, there's some C++, there's all these open source tools like Python and Ruby on Rails and all that, but Java and C# are running the industry. Kids are graduating with master's degree in computer science, and they're not even teaching them either one of those 2 languages. you
Right.
know so what's the point? What's the point? Unless you need to be a doctor or an attorney, unless you need a degree to pursue your profession, I think it's a waste of time. And at the very least, I think you should throw a backpack on and travel around the world for a year and come back and do it then.
Oh yeah.
So I know you're a little bit beyond that, but you're also young and you're single, and even if you're going to get married, you still don't have kids. So if you're
Hmm.
gonna take risks, do it now.
Yep.
So anyway, well, it's always a distinct pleasure. Did you get in touch with my dad by any chance?
I tried to call him again, and he's still Mr. Popular. So I'm gonna try again today. Yeah, I called him right after we hung up the phone. So
Okay.
I think he's screening my calls. So
He is popular. He's just slowing down now with regard to taking care of the elderly. And I used to joke that even to this day, most of the people that are elderly that he's taking care of are younger than he is.
right.
So he's doing well. He's
That's
doing
great.
well. So I'll give him your regards if I speak with him before you do. But anything else before we conclude today?
I think I may pick your brain a little bit on just some of those domain names you talked about too for additional skills and experience. And
Mm-hmm.
just as we were talking, it was like thinking through different ways I could leverage some of this stuff I'm doing at the school right now, even
Mm-hmm.
internally within the network. But yeah, I'll have to think about just some of the areas I'm trying to grow and develop on, but I'll probably reach out to you for some suggestions
Yeah,
on that. And
I'll give that some thought too. One of the things, there's a library, the Orlando Public Library, and I know you're in New York, but I would imagine that New York is even more
Oh yeah.
inclined to be making things available. But there's a facility in the Orlando Public Library that with a library card, I can go in there and I can take any class, almost any class that you could possibly think of for free. In the evening, and taught by instructors from some of the local universities. And it's part of the library and the city and the county and the state, making available resources to the general population. There's 2 sound booths that you can record in that are soundproof with excellent microphones. There's a video room with a green screen, a film quality lighting, and film quality cameras and equipment and microphones. And then there's simulators where you can learn how to drive a truck or fly an airplane, it's incredible. It's wicked high tech. There's computers everywhere, and it literally, it costs nothing. It costs $2 to park, and you could get a college education in that one room. And so these facilities exist everywhere. I don't know if are you a library card holder in New York?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
devoutly. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm actually looking at the library from where I'm sitting right now. So that was part of the reason. So
yeah, self-education's part of your DNA. That's good. Yeah, depending on the topic, like this tool here, it's called Zoom. I don't know. Have you ever been on a Zoom conference call before?
Yeah. So I actually did some interviews with EY and they use this. So it's like bridging its way there. And then, yeah, the video conferencing thing, we have schools in Miami and Camden and Newark. So we definitely leverage this stuff a lot. And it's amazing how choppy it was when I was at GE and just how much the technology has advanced in the last 6 years is incredible.
This is free. This doesn't cost anything. And one-on-one, you can record indefinitely. There's no time limit. As soon as you throw a third person on, I think they limit you to 40 minutes. But to pay up for a membership is like $20 a month. I mean, it's ridiculous. So whether it's web design or programming or financial tools or business knowledge, whatever the categories are, if you want to, when you have a second, if you want to give some categorical thought to it and just send those to me, I can dig through some of this stuff. But I've been self-educating in the online marketing business for years now, and the progress being made, whether it's speed or memory or user friendliness or graphics quality or sound quality, I mean, it's just amazing, absolutely amazing, But anyway, yeah, happy to help in any way. And if you have any friends, your biggest favor that you can do for me is just to advocate for what I'm doing with, putting this stuff in a bottle and trying to get it online.
Yep.
Because I think there's a huge audience for it out there. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yep. Yeah. And I'll be curious to see how you navigate that and everything too, because the scalability piece is definitely the big question. But yeah, I've got 3 people I'll send your name over to as soon as we're off the phone here.
Awesome. And who knew we were working on Sunday?
Yeah.
I hope the Lord forgives us, Alan.
Right. This is fun stuff. I think it's the Lord's work. I think he'll approve.
All right, dude. Well, listen, if there's nothing else, I'll let you run. You enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and go Irish.